All right, so another Genesis Bible study. This week we're in chapter 29. Now, we last left off with Jacob being sent to Haran to find himself a wife of his father's kin and his grandfather's kin being Abraham. And we saw that on the way to Haran, where he stopped off to sleep, he had a vision, and the Lord appeared unto him and repeated the same promise, the same words that the Lord had spoken unto Isaac his father and Abraham his grandfather. And that, of course, is the promise of the inheritance of the land for his seed. And the land I'm speaking of at that time was known as Canaan, but it would later become known as the land of Israel. The same land of Israel we know today. That was the land that was promised unto the Hebrews, unto the Jews, forever as an eternal possession through their patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So now, Jacob is going to make his way to Haran, and we are going to see that he is going to meet up with Laban, who was his mother's brother. And we are going to see that he is not only going to take a wife, but wives. And there's a reason for that. So before you start saying, oh, why would God allow him to have more than one wife? There's going to be a reason for it. And we will find out a little bit of that reason in this chapter and some more reason in the coming chapter. So let's just jump right into it. Verse 1. Then Jacob went on his journey, and he came into the land of the people of the east. And he looked, and behold, a well in the field, and lo, there were 3 flocks of sheep lying by it. For out of that well they watered the flocks, and a great stone was upon the well's mouth. And there were all the flocks gathered, and they rolled the stone from the well's mouth, and watered the sheep, and put the stone again upon the well's mouth in his place. And Jacob said unto them, My brethren, from where do you be? And they said, Of Haran are we. Now again, if you remember back earlier in Genesis, Haran is where Abraham had settled with his father Terah, his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, and their family thereafter. For a little while they had settled in Haran. So that now is where Jacob is returning to in order to find another descendant for him to marry, because it would be unlawful in God's sight, and we'd find it would be a problem if he were to marry a daughter of the land like Esau, his brother, had done, which not only displeased his parents, but displeased God, because those daughters would lead the children of Abraham and Isaac away from the true God and lead them unto worshiping false gods and to doing godless, abominable things. So Isaac and Rebekah did not want that for Jacob. So, he arrives in Haran, and verse 5, he said unto them, Know you Laban, the son of Nahor? And they said, We know him. And he said unto them, Is he well? And they said, He is well. And behold, Rachel his daughter cometh with the sheep. And he said, Lo, it is yet high day, neither is it time that the cattle should be gathered together. Water you the sheep, and go and feed them. And they said, We cannot until all the flocks be gathered together. Until they roll the stone from the well's mouth, then we water the sheep. And while he yet spake with them, Rachel came with her father's sheep, for she kept them. And it came to pass, when Jacob saw Rachel the daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, and the sheep of Laban, his mother's brother, that Jacob went near, and rolled the stone from the well's mouth, and watered the flock of Laban, his mother's brother. And Jacob kissed Rachel, and lifted up his voice, and wept. Now, how was that for a first impression? I mean, right away, Jacob knew this was the one. No doubt in his mind. And you could say, oh, well, he was kissing her because at that time she was family and, she was the daughter of his mother's brother. But that's not the thing. The minute Jacob saw her, he knew this was going to be my wife. Because we're going to find out going forward, it's going to say that Jacob loved her so much that he was going to serve and toil 7 full years for her love. So, no doubt about it, especially when he lifted up his voice and wept. I mean, you've heard of tears of joy. That's what Jacob was weeping, tears of joy, because he knew this was the one God had destined him to be with, and apparently she knew as well. And Jacob told Rachel that he was her father's brother, and that he was Rebekah's son. And she ran and told her father. And it came to pass, when Laban heard the tidings of Jacob, his sister's son, that he ran to meet him, and embraced him, and kissed him, and brought him to his house. And he told Laban all these things. Now, this is the same Laban that we read about in the days of Isaac, just so nobody gets confused. He is playing a part in the line of Abraham, almost all the way through with Abraham's descendants. Sometimes good, sometimes bad. And we're going to find out why bad in the future, near future. Okay, let's see. It came to pass when Laban heard the tidings of Jacob, his sister's son, that he ran to meet him, embraced him, kissed him, brought him to his house. And he told Laban all these things. And Laban said to him, Surely you are my bone and my flesh. And he abode with him in the space of a month. And Laban said unto Jacob, Because you are my brother, should you therefore serve me for nothing? Tell me, what shall your wages be? And Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the elder was Leah. The name of the younger was Rachel. Leah was tender-eyed, but Rachel was beautiful and well-favored. Want to stop real quick. Another thing you want to notice, the women that God gave to his chosen men were drop-dead, gorgeous, beautiful women. Because you remember Sarah Sarai, even in her old age, in her 90s, had young guys in Egypt falling head over heels for her. So imagine how she must have looked in her 20s. On top of that, Rebekah, same deal. Men of foreign lands, whenever her and Isaac would pass through, Isaac was afraid they would kill him because of the beauty of his wife. And now we find the same exact thing with Rachel. She was beautiful and well-favored. And Jacob loved Rachel and said, I will serve you 7 years for Rachel, your younger daughter. Think about that. With all the come and go relationships we have these days, with all the divorces, with all people falling into relationships with people because of a one-night stand or whatnot, this was true love. Have you ever loved someone so much that you would go 7 years without seeing their face or touching their body, knowing that in 7 years you would be able to do so? I venture to say most people these days would not, because they don't know true love. They would say, it's too long, I'll be an old man by then, I'll find somebody else, plenty of fish in the sea. But you know you truly love something or someone where you would go 7 years, a decade, even longer, knowing that the work you do now away from them will bring you together with them in the future forever. That's what Jacob saw. He had his eyes on the future. He said, you know what, I want her so bad, I will serve you 7 years for her. And Laban said, it is better that I give her to you than that I should give her to another man. So abide with me. And Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, so he did it. And get it, this is how you know it was true love. They seemed unto him but a few days, for the love that he had for her. Jacob said unto Laban, give me my wife, for my days are fulfilled, that I may go in unto her. Now in the Holy Bible, especially in the Old Testament, whenever you read go in unto, it usually means they're having sexual relations, they're going to sleep together. So he's basically saying, give me my wife so I can sleep with her. And Laban gathered together all the men of the place, and made a feast. And it came to pass in the evening that he took Leah his daughter. Now remember, this is his older daughter, and brought her to him. And he went in unto her. Did you catch that? It came to pass in the evening, so when it was dark outside, that, and also whenever there would be Jewish marriages back in the day, they may even still do it today, and that's, I believe, even where we get our custom in the Christian faith. You know how brides are normally veiled as they're brought out, and they're not allowed to see the groom before the wedding, etc. And then after they take their vows, the bride can take off her veil, they can kiss, and, the priest pronounces a man and wife. So that's kind of where we get our customs from, is the Jewish women would wear a veil over their faces on wedding night, so that the groom could not see them until the marriage was consummated. So I'm sure after they were feasting and partying all day at this wedding, that Jacob probably did a little bit of drinking at his young age. And so he was already a little tipsy come evening when Laban brought who Jacob thought was Rachel to him in his tent to lay with her. And I'm sure the way he wasn't able to tell Rachel and Leah apart body-wise, they were probably very similar in stature. So Laban here, instead of bringing Rachel like he promised to do when Jacob served 7 years for her, he brought Jacob Leah, his older daughter. And since she was veiled and it was dark out, Jacob didn't know it wasn't Rachel. So it says, he went in unto her. So he slept with Leah, whom he thought was Rachel. And Laban gave unto his daughter Leah Zilpah his maid for a handmaid. And it came to pass that in the morning, now this is when Jacob woke up, finally realizes what's going on. Behold, it was Leah. And Jacob said to Laban, what is this you have done unto me? Did not I serve with you for Rachel? Wherefore then have you beguiled me? And Laban said, it must not be so done in our country, to give the younger before the firstborn. Real quick, so you see that I've said in the past, God's will be done regardless. But if we do it our own way, if we bring God's will to pass in our own way, which is a way that we know God wouldn't be pleased with, yes, his will is going to come to pass regardless. But if you look back to how Jacob and his mother had got the blessing from Isaac, which Isaac wanted to give to Esau because they deceived Isaac. Now you're seeing that God is letting that come back to Jacob to teach him that, yes, God's will was fulfilled, but the way Jacob went about it was wrong when he was being a deceiver. So now Jacob is going to meet an even more cunning deceiver in Laban. So as God said, as you do, it shall be done unto you. Jacob deceived, and now he's being deceived. So it's coming full circle now in Jacob's life. He's going to learn never to act like that again, because now he knows how it feels to have it done unto him. So Laban says unto him, speaking of Leah, fulfill her week. Now, in the Bible, the week can mean many things, but it always has to do with 7. So you'll hear a week of years, which is basically 7 years. You have the Jubilee week of years, which is 7 periods of 7 years plus 1. The 50th year would be the Jubilee year. And so on and so forth. We have our 7-day weeks, etc. So there are different definition for weeks in the Bibles, and you can usually take them in context and figure out which week God is referring to. But here I believe that he means if you serve another 7 years, then you can have Rachel. So fulfill her week, and we will give you this also for the service which you shall serve with me yet 7 more years. And Jacob did so, and fulfilled her week. So he served another 7 years. So altogether, out of his great love for her, Jacob served 14 years for Rachel. 14 years for a woman he loved that he couldn't touch. Think about that. But he did it out of the great love he had for her. And so Laban gave him Rachel, his daughter, to wife also. Now that's why Jacob had 2 wives. Because he initially only wanted one, but the father who gives the daughters away for marriage deceived Jacob and gave him the older daughter first, which was quote unquote his custom. And then he gave him Rachel afterwards. So Jacob now obviously wouldn't disannul the first marriage and get rid of Leah. That wouldn't be fair to her. So God allowed it. So Jacob had the 2 wives. We're going to see that's going to be instrumental in God's plan for the children of Israel, because each wife is going to have different children. And also their handmaids are going to have a few children. That's how we're going to get the 12 tribes of Israel. So these 2 women are very important going forward. I'm going to read a little bit about some of the births of these women in this chapter, and then we're going to get to the rest of them in chapter 30 next week. Okay, so Laban gave to Rachel his daughter Bilhah, his handmaid, to be her maid. So unto Rachel Laban gave a handmaid named Bilhah, and unto Leah Laban gave a handmaid named Zilpah. Normally the handmaids wouldn't be that important, but here we're going to find that they are, just as Hagar was for Abraham. I'm going to explain why at the end of this study. And he went in also unto Rachel after 14 years. Jacob finally got to sleep with his wife, and he loved also Rachel more than Leah, obviously, and served with him yet 7 other years. And when the Lord saw that Leah was hated, obviously Jacob didn't hate her, just Leah, was despised, not intentionally, but because Jacob wanted Rachel all along. This was the one he kissed and he wept the first time he met her. So Leah, while she may have been decent looking to Jacob, she was not knockout, drop dead, gorgeous, beautiful, head to toe, like Rachel was. So of course, Jacob's going to favor Rachel. So in the Bible, they use the word hated, but Jacob didn't literally hate her like we think of the word hate today. But the Lord saw that Leah was hated or despised or just not treated with favor like Rachel was. So the Lord opened her womb, but Rachel was barren. And Leah conceived and bare a son, and she called his name Reuben. For she said, surely the Lord has looked upon my affliction. Now therefore my husband will love me. Reuben, obviously, like I said, with all the Jewish names, all the Hebrew names you're going to read about in the Holy Bible, they all have meaning. And normally you're going to be able to figure out what the meaning of those names are in the Bible, usually in the same verse when they speak of what they named a child, because they're going to tell you the reason why they named the child that. For she said, surely the Lord has looked upon my affliction. So obviously here Reuben would mean that the Lord has seen, or the Lord has looked upon my affliction. Sometimes it's literal, but these names, especially for all the 12 children of Israel, they're all going to have specific meanings to their names. And you're going to find that, I like how Chuck Missler pointed it out. If you ever go listen to his Genesis studies, talks about how if you look at the meanings of the names of each of the children of Israel, and I'll give them all in the next study. I want to give them all at once, all 12 names at once and their meanings. But basically, he said if you look at the meanings of all their names going down the line, they basically chronicle the history and the future of Israel in God's sight. So that's why I love Chuck Missler's teachings, because he delves so deep into the Bible, deeper than any other teacher I've ever known, and he finds all these connections from the Old Testament to the New, and it's just amazing when you see how God just has so many parallels between Genesis and Revelation and the children of Israel and Christians' relationship with Jesus. It's just all over the Holy Bible, things you would normally not recognize. Chuck Missler, in all his years of study before he passed, has found so many gems of wisdom that I believe every Christian should know. I talk about a lot of them in the Bible studies. I'm going to talk about a lot of them in the Bible studies, but I definitely recommend, if you ever have time, go look up Chuck Missler Genesis Studies on YouTube and take the time to watch at least one a week, hopefully one a day, and you will find it's going to greatly enhance your knowledge of the Bible. It definitely has mine. Okay, so Leah bore Reuben. This was the first child of Israel, Jacob. And she conceived again and bare a son, and said, because the Lord has heard I was hated, he has therefore given me this son also. And she called his name Simeon. So the first child was named because God had seen. The second child is named because God had heard. If you also remember, that's not the only child who was named because God hears. You go back to Ishmael, the son of Hagar, back in Abraham's days. She said, because God has heard, I'll call his name Ishmael. So they are different names, but they both basically mean the same thing, that God has heard. And she conceived again, so now she's going on child number 3, and bare a son, and said, now this time will my husband be joined unto me, because I have borne him 3 sons. Therefore was his name called Levi. And Levi would mean, I guess, to be joined unto in the Hebrew, because she said, now my husband shall be joined unto me. So Leah got her hopes up, saying, you know what? Rachel may be better looking. She may have a longer history with him, but I'm the one who bore him his first 3 sons. So now he's going to look upon me with favor. And then she conceived again, now the 4th time, and bare a son, and she said, now will I praise the Lord. Therefore she called his name Judah, and left bearing, meaning she stopped bearing at that time. So the most important name of this entire chapter and of all the tribes of Israel is going to be Judah. Reason for that being is because that's the tribe of Israel whom the Lord Jesus Christ is going to stem through, who's going to come from. That's why he's called the Lion of the tribe of Judah. And what I love about it is Judah, the actual name of the tribe that Jesus descends from, was prophesying the Messiah just in the name itself, because the name of Judah means he who is to be praised. Now, many at that time reading the Old Testament, reading Genesis, they probably thought, okay, Judah's going to be praised. Obviously, he was not really that praised. But the one who's going to stem through him, the Messiah of Israel, will be praised. He will be the one to be praised by all human beings on the face of the earth. The Lord Jesus Christ, Yeshua, will be praised. Now, that's only 4 children. We still have another 8 children of Israel that we're going to read about in chapter 30. And we're going to find that God is finally going to let Rachel bear some children. And we're going to find that Rachel and Leah are actually going to have their handmaids bear Jacob some children, just like Hagar did for Abraham. And that's how we're going to get to 12. But real quick, just so you can get an idea of where we're going next week, I'm going to give you the layout of the children of Israel, who their mothers would be. And we're going to find that Rachel is going to have 2. She's going to have Joseph. It's going to be a big character in the Holy Bible, a big name in God's sight. It's going to do a lot of great things concerning the future of the children of Israel. Benjamin, which we're going to find was going to be beloved not only to Rachel and to Jacob, but also to his brother Joseph. Tribe of Benjamin is going to be important in the future as well. And then Leah is going to have 2 more sons, Issachar and Zebulun. So that would give Leah 6 sons. Rachel would only have 2. And then Rachel is going to give her handmaid Bilhah to Jacob so that he could have Dan and Naphtali. Then Leah is going to give her handmaid to Jacob, so that he through Zilpah will have Gad and Asher. So Leah will have 6 sons, 6 children of Israel. Rachel will have 2 sons, 2 children of Israel. Rachel's handmaid will have 2. Zilpah's handmaid will have 2. That is going to give us 12 children to Jacob, 12 children of Israel, 12 tribes of Israel. And we're going to read some more about them, chapter 30. But until next week, friends, I hope you all learned a lot today. I hope you will tune in next week. And I will try and also bring you an episode of the Signs of Our Times next week, when hopefully we'll have some more certainty over these legal battles for the Trump administration trying to overturn this election, which has been stolen by the Democrats. And if you want to know why, if you haven't yet, watch my last Signs of the Times episode, in which I speak of why what the Democrats are doing, the lamestream media is doing, is stealing this election. It is a coup against the sitting president of the United States of America. So check that episode out if you haven't already. And until next week, friends, God bless you all and Godspeed.